All right, so today we're going to talk about some young adult books. Last week I filmed a young adult and adult science fiction fantasy video, kind of just this discussion of what I think about when I'm picking young adult books to read, what I don't like about the conversation, etc. And in that video, I talked about books that break the mold that I make for young adult and books that are in the mold and I really love. And I thought I'd talk about like 4 from each category by my definitions, obviously. And hopefully maybe you might find something you'd like. So like my first one is like 4 that like break out of the mold that I would totally recommend to all readers, but especially readers who don't like young adult because of its molding, like they don't like that packaging that I talked about in that video. So we're going to start with those, and then we're going to talk about ones that definitely lean into the things that I think about when I think about young adults, but I loved them. Like it was because of those things that I loved them. So let's get into it, starting with Each of Us a Desert. I have a review for this. I have a review for a lot of these because I really like them. Each of Us a Desert it doesn't follow the typical mold because it's very introspective. It's very slow paced. I think the setting is very unique, and I really loved the Latin influence in this story. So this is a story about Xochi. She has always been this village's story taker. There's, I think, a different word for it, but it's been so long since I've read that book. And she has to take the stories and give it back to Solis, the sun god, so that this village will not be overrun by monsters. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic future fantasy, but it's like one of those where like the post-apocalyptic future is so bad, technology doesn't really exist. And she's exhausted by this role in society. She's just drained. And so she ends up leaving her village to go on this journey to figure out if there was a way to remove this gift that she has, this burden. And you follow her on this journey. And I don't typically love journey stories, but I loved this one. Because of Xochi's gift, you get a really good insight into different people's point of views. I love the people she travels with. I love watching her grow. I love watching her deal with the conflict of changing her views towards her own religion, because that's largely what's happening. She's been raised one way, she's been believing one thing, and she's learning that's not the only way to believe. And then when she learns there's more than one way to believe, she has to figure out, well, what do I believe now? And I think that's a powerful journey. So those are the themes you will see in that book, which I don't think those are groundbreaking themes for a young adult story, but they hit something special for me. I loved the narrative structure. I thought it was very unique. Most of the time, I think it's sometimes written in second person, sometimes first. I could be wrong, it's been a couple months. But I really loved the overarching narrative structure. She's telling this story to someone, specifically Solis, I think. And I really loved that. And like I said, I really loved the setting, and it just captured me. And like I said, it really uses the Latine culture really well. Like, she just... the way Marco Shiro wrote it incorporated so many Spanish words in such a fluid way that I really loved it. I did listen to this on audiobook, and I have said in my review, maybe you shouldn't if you're not comfortable with the Spanish language, because it might throw you off, or your brain might absorb it like you would any fantasy word when you're reading a fantasy book. But I loved the audiobook, and I am tempted to get a physical copy just to absorb that quiet, slow journey story again. It was so cool. But like I said, it's a slow story. It's very introspective, which is why I don't think it fits into that typical mold, and why not everyone picks it up, because, I don't know, you're not always feeling that, right? You have to be in the right mood. Similarly, the next one I'll talk about is Dark and Deepest Red by Anna Marie McLemore. Oh, this story, I read this in 2 days. I'm not a book binger, guys. 2 days. This is a book I'd recommend to you if you like the Winternight trilogy, if you like Uprooted, if you like Spinning Silver. This book is lyrically very similar to theirs. It follows 2 timelines, a timeline that's, I think, in the 1500s France. I could be wrong, but it's very far away from now, I think 500 years. And it follows like present day Texas. And you're watching these parallel stories, one from Romani refugees, kind of. I don't know if refugees is the right word, but they are Romani people who are kind of trying to pass as Italian because they don't want the prejudice and the scapegoating that's going to happen. And then the Dance of Plagues happens, which is actually, I think, like a real folktale or event. And that happens, we're learning about that at the same time as this area kind of goes through its week of magic, and it involves red shoes, and one of our main characters, a Mexican American, puts on these shoes, can't take them off, and suddenly can't stop dancing. And you follow these parallel stories and you see how they're connected. And I loved all these characters so much. It's multiple point of view. You have like 2 characters from the present day and I think 1 from the past. There's trans representation. It was so lyrical, so pretty. Every sentence just melted in my brain. I do know some people who have read Anna Marie McLemore don't find this to be their favorite, but this is my first one and I'm so excited to read more because it was one of those things where it was lush. Like, I don't normally fall into that, but I was just like, this is beautiful. I'm so engaged. I want to know what happens next. I was so invested. So like I said, if you've read some of those adult books and you really liked that part of those adult book experiences, this was beautiful, and I think it's a really great read. Another one I want to mention is Pet by Koike Emezi. I like this book a lot. This book was such a surprise, and I wasn't even going to prioritize it or read it, but it was so good. I did this with audiobook as well, and this is a story about Jam, I believe is her name. It's been 8 months since I've read this, I think. And her mother makes art, and one of these art projects kind of comes to life and is Pet. And Pet is a monster hunter. Now, this is the island of Lucille. Monsters are not supposed to exist anymore. This is kind of like a futuristic fantasy where we live on this island. Well, I don't even know if it's an island, but you live in Lucille. And there are no more monsters, and monsters are the metaphor for domestic abuse, gun violence, all of the problems in the world that we have right now. List any you want, in theory, gone. But she accidentally summons Pet, and Pet says, we have to go here. There's a monster. We have to find it. And it involves Pet's like best friend, and it's this whole mystery, and I was completely enchanted. I don't know how else to say it. I think this is a story that's kind of timeless in its structure. It definitely just, like I said, it transported me. I was trying to find extra time to listen to this audiobook, which is not a standard for me. So I highly recommend it, especially if you want good, just seamless trans rep, because that's also in this book. And Dark and Deepest Red and Pet are both actually written by non-binary authors, if you're ever looking for works like that as well, written with that representation. And the last one I'll have for this section of like, broke my mold, blew my mind, I love them so much, Catfishing on Catnet. And I don't even know why. I don't even know if it really breaks the mold, but this is like, it's hard for me to give like 5-star ratings to young adult books. I don't know why. It's like it's hard for me to give 5-star ratings to sci-fi books. There are just certain genres that I'm like really harsh in and I don't understand. This book, I could not put it down. And I don't actually know if it really breaks the mold, but it was like a book that I loved so much. And in some ways, you know, I don't read this that often. It's kind of like a thriller, young adult sci-fi, and I don't read that very often. It has an AI character. It has found family, so it's definitely pretty tropey. So I probably should have put it in the other category. But I loved it so much. You have this girl and her mom who are always traveling across the country. They have to always switch schools to the point where I think when you start the book, she's switching schools so quickly after her last school. She doesn't even have transcripts. It's been like 3 weeks. So they're constantly traveling across this country, running away from her father, because presumably her father is a bad guy. That's the information you have. And she ends up at this school, and she meets some people, and she starts to form connections, but most of her connections are on this place called Catnet, and that's where most of her friends are. And these people in their like instant messaging space are the greatest, and how helpful they are as the mystery and thriller elements ramp up is both very helpful and supportive and cute and just hysterical. And it just like, I don't know, it was so fun. I don't know how else to say it. I'm reading the sequel soon and I hope I also equally love that. And so I had to talk about it in this video because it's probably my favorite young adult book to date. Now we'll talk about ones that I expected to be pretty tropey and like pretty much a certain way, and they were, but it was amazing. And we'll start with The Gilded Ones. This one I read very recently and I was really happy. Like there are some things that I didn't love, like there's parts of the ending that I was like, for now I don't love that, but maybe with the sequel I'll feel better because it is the first in a series. But this is a story about a girl who is different, and because she's different, she has to go down a different path in life, and it involves like a military school, and it involves found family, and it involves a first love. There's an animal companion. Like this has it all. And I really liked it. I thought the found family elements were particularly strong with this one. This is one of the first young adult books that I felt like really showed a character caring about her best friend more than the love interest in a way that I think is super healthy and good. Because like that best friend is so important. That is like your go-to person. Whereas this first love, very interesting, very intriguing, but like not more important than the best friend. I thought the priorities there were super top notch. I really liked the military school stuff. I thought the mystery was equal parts predictable and fun, which is fine with me. And yeah, my only complaint is the falling action, which could be redeemed in the second book. That sometimes can happen with series for me, as I don't like where one place leaves off. But I had such a surprisingly good time with it. I mean, I had no expectations. You know, sometimes you pick up a book and you're like, I know it has these tropes, but I don't know the execution of those tropes. And for me, I mean, I was thrilled with the execution of the tropes, especially since some of them are my favorite. Another one we'll talk about is Scythe. This is kind of that dystopian YA, right? I mean, I read Hunger Games, I read Divergent, I was a part of that whole thing. It was before I knew there was a booktube, but I read them all. And so I was optimistic but hesitant with this one, and it did unfortunately follow the trajectory for me of those other trilogies. But the first book, it's solid. And, you know, you can read the whole trilogy, or you could just read the first book. That's my opinion. And I really liked the world building, and I thought it was a great execution of the idea of this dystopian world, which I do think is something that's really well executed in Hunger Games and Divergent. So it kind of followed that mold of like, here's this dystopian world with these rules, and these teenagers are put in a weird situation, and it helps you learn more about the world. If you haven't heard about this book, which could be true, but this is a sci-fi dystopian novel. It follows these two teenagers who get apprenticed as Scythes, and Scythes are the people who are responsible for culling the human race because now nobody dies. And so the only way for people to die is for a Scythe to choose to kill them. And you kind of learn how that works. And there are some issues I have with the plot and the character work in the series overall, but for the most part, it was completely exactly what I wanted. A very easy read with a really cool world that I got to explore. I buddy read this with my friend Jade. It was a great time. The next one we'll talk about is Incendiary, and I'm reading the sequel very soon. And this one, I mean, I didn't know a lot about, but I did know parts of it, and that it would probably lean into some tropiness. And it did and it didn't. I'm really excited for the sequel, mainly because I'm hoping it leans into some of my favorite tropes, which I can't mention because they're spoilery. But this is a world where you have, oh, I'm forgetting their name, but there's a group of people who can have one of 4 powers. And the Emperor is like, no, these people cannot exist unless they work for me. I will have one of each because they each have a distinct power. And the rest of them have to hide in the hills, and they have a rebellion. Think Star Wars. Like, it's nothing like Star Wars, but that's what actually was part of the inspiration by the author for this book. And we follow our character who can basically take people's memories and take them. Like, she will remember them, they will be in her head and no longer in that other person's head. And it can become worse than that, which is why people always fear her. So even this rebellion fears her, but everyone wants to use her. And you follow, I think her name is Ren. That sounds familiar. I'm really bad at remembering names, and I haven't read this book since like October. But I had such a fun time. The first third and the last third were so fast paced. Like, could not put it down. I was heart palpitations. I was so stressed. The middle third was slower, but not in a bad way. It was like kind of the like calm before the storm part of a YA, where we get to like explore this castle and stuff like that. It had stuff that I really liked. And like I said, it set it up for some of my favorite stuff in the sequel. I just really liked it. And it's also, I think, based off like the history in Spain and the Inquisition, which again, that's just not a part of Europe we get to explore in fantasy very often. So I really liked that. And the last book we'll talk about is We Hunt the Flame. I am picking up We Free the Stars either today or tomorrow as I'm filming this. So I've already read it probably by the time you've seen this video, and hopefully I liked it. I feel a little burned by a recent sequel I have read. But this was a really great time. It had the girl who hunts for her family but has to pretend to be a boy. It has the dark prince who like is actually good but has to pretend to be evil. You have a group of magical people who have to go on a quest to save the day. We have magic kind of sputtering in and out of the world. It's a tropey fun time. I had a really good time. I can't actually even tell you specific plot points. I can tell you that I really liked our 2 leads. I remember being instantly comfortable in the tropes of the world. I think the world is so cool. It's like a desert fantasy, Middle Eastern inspired. I really liked it. And like some people think the first part's slow, but I really liked the first part. And then it gets a little questy. I'm like, this is fine. But I miss more the quiet moments because that's who I am. But I really liked it. So I'm hoping I really like the sequel. So those were 8 young adults that I wanted to talk to you guys about because I do like the young adult genre. I'm just very like picky, I guess, which I think is fair. I think everyone should be picky about the books they read because why not? It's a hobby. You might as well read what you like. And I would love to know though, if any of the young adult I've mentioned made you think of a young adult that you think I would like, put that in the comments because I'm always looking to expand the pool of young adult books that I pull from because I don't know, I do like picking from that genre, but I'm like way pickier at curating my TBR for that. So put down what and why without spoiling the book because I still like discovering things. So like even like if it has an animal companion, don't tell me, or do if it's like on page 1. But like some books, you know, if it happens way later, don't tell me. I love to be surprised. I love it. And if you want to leave an emoji, leave a cat for catfishing on Catnip because I'm determined to make more of you read it because it is so good. It's such wholesome, stressful fun. I don't understand who I am. But if you've made it this far, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.